just entered the theater of an alien sky. If the words and images seem strange to you, there's a reason for this. Our world was once a vastly different place. To experience this won't hurt you, and there is nothing to fear.
Tonight's talk, this is the most popular talk we've ever done in 15 years. Please welcome one of the world's great public intellectuals, Jordan Peterson.
Well, that was nice.
It's not surprising that we've been asked to comment on the YouTube presence of Canadian psychologist Jordan Peterson. It seems his star rose spectacularly after a record-setting interview with Britain's Channel 4 host Cathy Newman. Posted on YouTube in January, the interview attracted over 11 million views in about 6 months, with an overwhelmingly positive rating, not to mention the multitude of repostings of the same or similar material garnering up to 1 million views each. Prior to this remarkable turn, there was little to distinguish Peterson from other qualified presenters on YouTube. But now, when Peterson gives public presentations, auditoriums sell out. Just one cautionary note is required here. Though Peterson is most definitely not an evangelist for any religious view, he does single out the dominant religion of the Western world, Christianity, as an indispensable force in our culture. And he frequently states his personal view that civilization would collapse were a culture to fully abandon its broad religious heritage. Due to the diversity of people contributing to the Thunderbolts Project, we've avoided contemporary politics and religion when discussing the electric universe movement. After many years of observing this rule, we can now say that without this constraint, the Thunderbolts Project could never have emerged as the most popular internet voice of the electric universe idea. So we've asked ourselves how to respond to our own supporters urging us to take up Peterson and his work. The answer has come from looking more closely at how he acquired his current perspective. His academic training placed an emphasis on the mythic archetypes, the deepest structures of human thought in ancient times, echoing across all of human history and continuing to influence our world today. By their cultural impact, Peterson observes, the archetypes have provided guidelines to humanity, inspiring people to live productively and responsibly in the world. Though we don't have an answer to offer on contemporary religious and political questions, we've noted that Peterson's historic subject matter is pretty close to that of psychologist Carl Jung, who saw in the world's great myths a repeated presence of certain first forms, evident in the early expressions of human consciousness. By archetypes, Jung meant deeply embedded, recurrent patterns of sacred beliefs and practices the world over. Bringing the ancient mythic and symbolic structures to light became the first priority in Jung's approach to human psychology. So we see in Peterson's presentations a clearly stated respect for Jung and for such comparative mythologists as Joseph Campbell. And it's worth emphasizing that most comparative mythology does not require a student of ancient history to know how an archetype arose. What really counts, they would say, is the archetype's cultural function. One discerns its role as the culture strives to affirm its own identity in a changing world. But for us, there is also a deeper level of analysis available, one almost never expressed in popular treatments of the archetypes. Our claim is that the real obstacle to deeper insight is the one that prevents an investigator from seeing what will ultimately become obvious. The archetypes did not originate in today's natural world, nor did they emerge from a vacuum. They arose as the effect of a prior cause within a natural order that disappeared thousands of years ago. If we're correct in this fundamental conclusion, just imagine the scale of the disconnect when trying to comprehend the ancient archetypes in terms of familiar natural experience today. All we'll have available to us are the later projections of mythic themes onto fragments of the natural world, while the original provocation remains forever elusive. Well, the remarkable truth is that by following rational ground rules for comparative analysis, hundreds of archetypes can be reliably identified, and not just by their own essential qualities, but by seeing them in terms of origin and timeless significance. All archetypes have a direct connection to an extraordinary natural experience, and all are inseparably connected to each other, with no more than 2 or 3 degrees of separation between any of them. With this specificity in front of us, we can assure anyone coming into this discussion for the first time that the answers given will not allow us to simply perpetuate modern-day interpretations of ancient myths and symbols. And so we've stated our conclusion emphatically and repeatedly that the archetypes point back to a former time, and the most persuasive answer requires the clearest connection between cause and effect, as the cause itself becomes logically inescapable. That's it, we will then say. But next comes the greatest challenge, arising from a vast field of evidence, confirming that each and every archetype arose explosively in response to earth-shaking and mind-altering events. To many newcomers, that proposed cause will seem preposterous. Yet, after decades of systematic research, we have never found any other plausible cause of a single archetype. And that means no justification for ignoring the cause that fits the evidence precisely. For those close to the Thunderbolts Project, the greatest surprise has come from the predictive ability of the reconstruction offered. What one would expect to find within the framework proposed, one does find. In this regard, it seems that Jordan Peterson himself has delivered to us several examples well worth exploring. In number 7 of his Maps of Meaning series, he takes up what some have called the consilience test for assessing the overall integrity of an idea. That test becomes particularly useful when a novel idea reaches across multiple layers or patterns of fact, he states. Of course, we've drawn on this very principle when we've proposed what we've called the acid tests of the historic polar configuration, the centerpiece of our reconstruction. Do the mythic archetypes become predictable when seen from the perspective of this evolving configuration? Our claim has been that hundreds of archetypes meet the acid tests unequivocally, a level of specificity that could not be possible by cherry-picking. When comparing our claims to Peterson's test of consilience, one difference should be noted, and this difference shows up in virtually all comparative studies of the mythic archetypes. The more familiar studies, such as the highly popular work of Joseph Campbell, invariably stop short of anything that could be called an explanation. While describing undeniable patterns, they do not penetrate to a proposed origin or first cause. The archetypes are simply there as a profound influence on human conduct and cultural evolution over time. But this is where our challenge to today's most pervasive scientific illusion enters the picture. The illusion that we've called the uniformity principle. Others have called it uniformitarianism. The uniformity principle suggests to astronomers and planetary scientists that they can retrocalculate the position of any planet in the ancient sky at any historical juncture based on today's planetary motions. They will not realize that in the 19th and 20th centuries, this disregard for ancient testimony was the greatest mistake of modern science, a mistake that continues to echo through all of the scientific disciplines today. Of course, when living in the shadow of this mistake, the very idea of earth-altering events in the past will appear preposterous. But allow the ancient witnesses to speak, and a vastly different sky will reveal itself. We've proposed that all of world mythology, all of the enchanting stories and symbols and commemorative practices that have come down to us, are explained by an ancient gathering of planets close to Earth. We make that claim based on global evidence. Yes, in innumerable instances, evidence is remarkably explicit, but explicit will not mean obvious to a person looking somewhere else. No one could explain or has ever explained the archetypes in the absence of an extraordinary human experience, and that's the historical truth we'll continue to highlight in these discourses. It's also why we invite Jordan Peterson, who's contributed so much to public discussion of the archetypes, to join us in a common exploration of first causes and their implications. Few sciences or social sciences could possibly escape the effects that followed from the most fundamental theoretical error in our time.